if I get through the sermon, it's going to be pretty awesome because my voice, yesterday I was in the car with Soleil and I was talking and she's like, ew, your voice is awful. Stop talking, please. So I've got very little left, but thank you for microphones and water, right? So we're going to get through this together. But 2 weeks ago, as a part of our Journey series, Journey with Jesus, Scott stood up here and told a story that involved 12 disciples in a boat with Jesus, and the waters were choppy, and the disciples were scared for their lives. Jesus chastised them for their lack of faith, came to the rescue, and saved the day, right? And Scott made the point with crystal clarity, hey, like in the storms of life that you're facing, you can trust the one who can command the winds and the waves. Like, that's the point of the story. Like, who is Jesus? He's the point. And so it was awesome to hear that in today's story. Once again, the disciples are going to be in a boat. The waters are going to be choppy. They're going to find themselves, at least one of them, scared to death. And Jesus will chastise them for the lack of faith. And maybe you're thinking, wait a second here, Jacques. That's a little bit weird. I mean, 2 stories in a row like that kind of make the same point. Are there more stories in the Bible you can tell that kind of have a different point? It's a big book after all, and that's a fair point. But I want you to think about it this way. A few years ago, my friend Jimmy, who is Sue's beloved husband, passed away and lost his battle for cancer. He fought it, but the battle growing in him, he was not going to win that battle. And like for so many people that you and I have known, like stole way too many years of his life. But as he fought the battle and he grew weaker, I tried to visit him at least once a week, sometimes twice, at first in the hospital, then at home, and later on in hospice. And the closer he got to the end, the more intimate the conversations, the more direct the conversations that we had would be. And I remember one time sitting bedside with him, and I was getting ready to leave, and I could tell he just needed another word of encouragement. And so I said, Jimmy, I said, God loves you, man. And he's here with you every second of every minute of every day. And I know you're worried about what's going to happen after you pass. And hey, dude, trust the God that you fell in love with. Right, and I just kind of poured that in. He thanked me, and so I left, and I came back, a few days later, and he was getting a little bit weaker, and I was about to leave, and he said something to me that was kind of interesting. He said, hey, what you said to me when you were about to leave the other day, could you say those things again? And so I did. God loves you. God cares for you, man. I know you're worried about what's going to happen after you're gone. You know what? Just trust the God who's got you, my friend. It's going to be okay. And I left, and when I came back to visit the next time, and I was about to leave, he said the same thing. Hey, remember what you said to me? Could you say those words again? And so I did. You see, as the storm raged on, he needed to hear those same words, soak on those same promises again and again, that God somehow is bigger than all of this. And even when it feels like life is out of control, I can trust this God because he cares for me. And so I think it's okay for you and I to soak in a story that tells a similar point and encourages us in a similar way that we can trust the solid rock no matter what the storm is. So will you pray with me this morning? May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. If you have your Bibles, Matthew chapter 14 tells our story this morning, so you can open it up there. Also, John tells this story as well as Mark, but we're going to look at the Matthew account this morning, starting at verse 22. Immediately, it says, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and go ahead of him to the other side when he dismissed the crowd. So, immediately, it says, Jesus made the disciples get in a boat. Why he forced them to do this, we don't know for sure, but we do know what had just transpired prior, which is kind of significant, right? He had just preached probably one of the longest sermons in history because people were so awestruck. Just think about this, hanging on every word, that even though their bellies were starting to get hungry and they maybe hadn't eaten all day, they weren't going to go anywhere. There was something about sitting at the feet of Jesus when he taught. And because of that, we got to the end of the day and they're a little bit hungry, and the disciples are kind of worried. And they're like, hey, Jesus, like, you got to send these people home. They need to feed their families. They need something to eat. And Jesus says, well, basically, you figure it out, right? And they're like, well, Jesus, we got nothing here. And we got this one kid here who's got a couple loaves and some fish, but that's about it. And he says, that's probably enough. And he prays over the loaves and fish, right? And then he tells his disciples, start handing it out. I would love to have seen the look on their faces when they go up to the first dude and they're like, hey, take as much as you want, I guess. And 5,000 plus later, everyone has their fill. There's 12 basketfuls left over, right? So they just finished seeing one of the incredible miracles of their lives, of their time with Jesus. And so they've got this huge surge of faith. And for whatever reason, Jesus makes them get in a boat, right? This is not a suggestion. This is not, hey, like, what do you guys want to, this? Or no, this is none of those things. It's, hey, guys, get in a boat now, and you're going to go to the other side. So why did he command this? We're not told outright, but the context is this. I mean, Jesus is up to something, right? He's the director of the play. He's been creating experiences that teach these guys lessons on this journey with Jesus all along the way. He's calling the shots, and he's got something he needs them to discover that involves getting in the boat that they're about to see. And so without hesitation, they get in the boat, and once again, they set sail on the Sea of Galilee. Verse 23 says this, after he dismissed them, he went up by himself on a mountainside to pray. By the way, I love this about Jesus. And as you discover and as you read in the Gospels, you start to realize that busyness for Jesus is never an excuse for two things. Busyness is never an excuse to neglect people. It's one of the things we learn in the text. It was never, whenever a people issue came up, I don't have time for you. He made time. He welcomed interruptions. He always found a way. It was never program over people. It was people first. I don't think we talk enough about this. Especially me, I love checklists. Any other, checklist people here? Oh, it's so good. I get up in the morning, and it's the first thing I do. I write a checklist of all of the things that I want to accomplish that day. And do you know how rewarding it is? When you check one of those off, it's just something about that feels good. And then when you get to the end of the day, and they're all crossed out, for me, so satisfying. The problem for Jesus, his to-love list always greater than his checklist, right? Busy was never an excuse. And the second thing, busyness was never an excuse for him to neglect alone time with his Father. He always found a way. You read the Gospels, time after time, he's telling his disciples, hey, you know what, you guys go in town. I'm just going to go over here to the mountain and pray. Hey, you guys get in a boat, and I'm going to go up there and pray. Hey, you guys go hang out. And he never, ever, no matter how busy things got, he never abandoned, he never compromised on that alone time with God. He didn't. And if you have any desire to make a difference for God, to pour yourself into people, there's this healthy principle worth knowing. And it's simply this, God fills us for a reason, you know that? We come in here and we worship and we soak in the Word together, or maybe at home on your knees or sitting at a desk and you're reading your Bible and you're praying, and God fills you for a reason so that you will take what he fills you with and empty it into the world and to the people around you, and then you come back craving his filling again. That's a healthy Christian cycle. And so Jesus never made an excuse. Busy, not an excuse for Jesus. But how often, if we're honest, is that the excuse that we use? Guilty as charged here, right? And there's some lessons that we can learn from Jesus in this. Verse 23. Later that night, when he was there alone, the boat was already way out from shore, right? Buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. They're not getting as far as they would like. Tell me, by the way, I haven't seen this movie before. The disciples are in a boat and they're struggling, right? It's at night this time. They can't make headway. The waves are too strong. The boat is so far out that even if he screamed, they're not going to hear him. And so Jesus at this point only has one option, really, right? During the fourth watch of the night, verse 25, Jesus went out to them walking on the water. All right, so Jesus is looking around. The boat, his peeps are in there, too far out. There's no boat in sight. And so Jesus does what any, God-powered person would do. He goes out not into the lake. He goes out onto the lake. There's a big difference, my friends, between into the water and onto the water. I know this because, you see, this miracle, I promise you, has inspired not hundreds or thousands, probably millions of young Christ followers to do exactly what I did all those years ago, to test my faith in a similar way, right? I'll never forget, I was probably 8 or 10 years old, the Best Western Hotel. Like my parents, when we grew up and we vacationed, we never stood in hotels. We just didn't, right? Every once in a while, maybe 2 or 3 times in my whole childhood, we'd go and visit Grandma in Nova Scotia or my family in Quebec, and we'd stay with them, and us kids would sleep on the floor. And I'll never forget, my father came to us one day, and he said, hey, I took Monday off. I'm not going to go in and work on Monday. I've been saving up some money. And on the way back from visiting Grandma, we're going to stay at a hotel. What do you think the first question we asked was? Does it have when you're 10 years old, that's all you care about? And we're like, do we really have to see Grandma? Can we just go to the pool right now? And I remember on the way back, we check into the Best Western, and we get up in our rooms, and we're like, can we go? Like, we couldn't get in our swimsuits fast enough, and we go down there. And I remember just looking at the pool, and there wasn't a person in it, and I'm standing on the edge, and my brothers and I are getting ready to go in. And there's multiple options we have at this point, right? You can go cannonball. That's cool. I respect that. You can do a scissor kick. You can do a flip. You can just, if you want to, walk slow. You can do whatever. My Sunday school teacher that week must have been talking about this story from Matthew 14. Because I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to see how far I can get, how many steps I can get running on the water before I sink. Right? And it's like a 10-year-old boy. I remember being on the deck of the pool, and I just closed my eyes. I'm like, God, I got this. God, I got this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to walk on water. You watch. You wait and see. It's going to work for me, right? And inside of me, I'm like, I think I can do this. I actually think I can. And so I open my eyes, and I'm like, if I just get a fast enough start, like, boom, bam, and I start running as fast as I can, and I lunge out into the pool. Do you know how many steps? How many steps on water I took? 2. Now, I don't know if you can legally count them as steps, because the second I hit, I started going. I actually not believed, because if I had believed, I probably would have made it according to which, I actually thought I could make it to the other side, right? So Jesus is walking out, and this is, by the way, is the 4th watch of the night. So the Jews, under Roman rule, had adopted their division of night into 4 different watches. So like 6 p.m. to like 9 when you're feeding your kids and then putting them in bed, that's the first watch of the night. And then 9 to midnight when you're binge watching Netflix is the second watch of the night. And then midnight to 3 in the morning is the 3rd watch. It's kind of that you're starting in, it's your lighter area of sleep. You're entering into the your REM sleep. And then the 4th watch of the night is 3 in the morning till 6 in the morning, right? It's the quietest part of the night. It's the loneliest, if you will, part of the night. It's the darkest, if you will, part of the night. It's the part of the night when you're in the deepest sleep. This is a big deal in the story to me, right? And by the way, kudos to Jesus, because in the pitch black at night, to be like, I'll step on what? Like that? You get mad props there. But Jesus was about to reveal himself and do some work in the middle of the night here, right, on his disciples, in what we would call the wee hours of the morning. And this is intriguing for me, because I have a hard time believing that this is accidental, that Jesus would just wait until the quietest, darkest, loneliest part of the night to do this work, to reveal himself, whatever lesson he had to teach, that they needed to discover on this journey with Jesus, that he would wait till then to do it. Now listen, I know God can accomplish work at any moment in the day in you, right? It doesn't matter day or night, God can do his deal. But have you ever had a restless night? Right, where like you just couldn't sleep and you're laying there and you're tossing and turning and you got so many thoughts maybe going through your mind, or your heart is heavy with something that's bothering you, And rather than just fight it, oh, gosh, I got to find a way to sleep, and you're trying to make yourself sleep, have you ever just stopped at that point to sit up and pray? Anybody ever done that? Just stop to sit up and pray. Some of the most powerful moments of prayer I've had have been in the fourth watch of the night, have been at 3 in the morning, when it's quiet, when it's dark, when there's no distractions. As a matter of fact, here's a challenge. I just want to throw this out to you guys today, all right? And I know not everybody here is going to do this. Somebody here is going to hear it and do it, and it's going to change your life. But here's the challenge. I want you to take 30 days, 1 month, 30 days. Set your alarm every day for 1 month for 3 in the morning. There's someone who's not going to do it. And there will be a separation of sheep from the goats. Set it for 3 in the morning and wake up and pray. Even if it's only for 10 or 15 minutes and you go back to sleep, just try it and see what happens. See what God will reveal to you in the fourth watch of the night. Just wait and see what would happen. Well, at 3 in the morning, Jesus is about to reveal himself to his disciples when they're alone and vulnerable, when they least expect it. Matthew 14:26. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and they cried out in fear. So here they are, once again in a boat, once again scared for their lives. So Jesus is walking on the water towards the boat. At 3 in the morning, it's dark, it's real dark. And I want to come back to this whole darkness thing. Let's pause here for a moment, because the disciples are spooked, and they're overtired, and their minds are probably still racing from the events that had transpired that day. And here they are. The rabbi commanded them to get in the boat at night, knowing they knew the weather. They were fishermen. They knew it was going to be a headwind. They knew it was going to be a hard work to get to the other side. But yet Jesus said, get in the boat now and go to the other side. So they did, and they're tired and spent. And just when the day couldn't get any weirder, I want you to imagine that moment for them. At night, no electricity, no cell phones, no flashlights or headlights. Maybe they had a lantern or two. And they look over the dark waters, and there's a man coming to them walking on the water. Yeah, they're spooked. Can we consider the context and cut them a little bit of slack here? I used to swim at night on the island growing up, Prince Edward Island. And man, it was spooky. You go out there at night and you get into the water with your friends and you're goofing around and one of their toes brushes against your legs and you get the will. It's terrifying. Brent and Seamus and Neil and I one night, we went out on a boat in the middle of the night, like 3 in the morning. And we're out there just having fun, just goofing around. We're out on the ocean, right, like a mile from shore. And then Brenton says, so who wants to jump in the water, right? And we're all like, no, well, not me, right? And then so we started arguing about who was going to be the first one to get out of the boat and jump into the water. And it's just something about the darkness. There's something about how murky that water looks, how you can't see anything below us. We all went in. It took us an hour or so to convince ourselves to do it because we were terrified. Yeah, spooked is what they are. I would be too. Verse 27, Jesus sees that they're spooked and confused. They look like they'd seen a ghost. The first thing that Jesus does matters, right? What does he do? He comforts them, right? He reassures them. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. Calm down. I'm here. It's just me. In other words, he reminds them of his presence. This is not a small detail in the story, I think, because what he could have said was this, guys, are you kidding me? Haven't you seen enough? A paralyzed man, a man with a shriveled hand, a woman with internal bleeding, a leper. Peter, your own mother-in-law, I healed them all. I cast demons out. Last time we were on this lake, I calmed the wind and the waves, for crying out loud. I told you that I'd be with you always. I got a plan for you. I just fed 5,000 with some Chick-fil-A nuggets and French fries, for crying out loud. Where is your faith? And Jesus had every right to do that. And eventually he kind of does. But it's the order of events that intrigue me with Jesus. Do you notice them? It's comfort first. Criticism comes later. Guys, you have me. I'm here. Don't be afraid. Comfort first, criticism. It was always that way, have you noticed, with Jesus? Whether it was in the boat the first time, whether it was the woman that was caught in adultery, neither do I condemn you. Comfort first. Here I am. It's you and me, and I got you, and I love you, and I forgive you. And then here comes the challenge. The stuff that you've been doing, it's got to go. Leave your life of sin. The order of events matter. It mattered to Jesus, and I think it should matter to us. Because if you come to me and your life is a mess, and things are falling apart at the seams, and maybe you're scared to make your next move, or you're feeling lost or lonely or confused or defeated or threatened, here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to berate you and demean you. I'm not going to look at you and go, you're the problem. Look at your lack of faith. I'm going to remind you in the middle of all of this that right here, in the middle of this conversation, like right now, right here, as we're talking right here, Jesus is with you, and he loves you, and I'm going to remind you of his presence. Now, as we talk about the things we can learn and discover about what it means to follow Jesus in the middle of it, what this struggle you're in might reveal, I might challenge you and confront you if necessary, but the order of events matter. Do not be afraid. It's me. He reminds them of his presence, and I love that. So Peter hears that, right? Verse 28. I love this. Tell me then if it's you, Jesus, to come out on the water. All right, come on, Jesus said. Sometimes I wonder how Peter's brain works. Like, why get out of a perfectly good boat? So once there was a tourist who was taking a tour of biblical sites. They were on the Holy Land thing, right? And they came up to the Sea of Galilee, and there was a boat on shore with a sign in it that said, hey, free boat ride to the exact place where Jesus and Peter walked on water. Free boat ride. And he was like, man, it's too good to be true. So he boarded the boat and enjoyed the ride to the middle of the lake. When the captain finally stopped the boat and pointed to the spot and said, hey, this is the exact spot where Jesus and Peter walked on water. And the tourist, just kind of stood there. He was like, wow, that's kind of cool. Hung out there for a minute. And then after a few minutes, got kind of bored and said to the captain, okay, I want to go back now. I've seen enough. Can you take me back to the shore? To which the captain pointed to the sign and said, look, it says, free boat ride to the exact spot where Peter and Jesus walked on water. It's going to cost you $50 for the ride back. To which the tourist, shocked, blurted out, no wonder Peter got out of the boat and walked away. Yeah. But yeah, I know. Thank you. But whatever the reason was, Peter, right on cue, speaks before thinking, maybe. Thinking it through anyways. All right, Jesus, I get it. You healed people and then told us to do it, and I did. And you cast out demons and told me to do it, and I did. And you told us to talk about your kingdom like you did, and I did. If you're going to walk on water, then I can too. Wow. And Jesus just does this. And I know it was just like this because I've seen Mortal Kombat. Like, I know it was just like that. Fairly convinced of it. Do you ever wonder when you read the Bible? Like, I fantasize sometimes about this kind of thing, the stories that we read, the incredible things that went down, all the events that took place, especially with Jesus. You ever wonder, like, if you could go back in time and just be there, live and in color? If you could, like, choose 2 or 3 of those moments to be there and just witness the whole event go down, you ever wonder which of those events you would choose? For me, this is one of them. Could you imagine being in that boat when Peter pops off, anything you can do, Jesus, I can do better? And Jesus, rather than saying, don't be silly, Pete, I'm getting in the boat, we're going to go to shore. No, he doesn't do that. Could you imagine being in that boat? I want to go back in time and be there. Like, I wonder if the other 11 were just kind of like quietly stunned and shocked. I don't think they were, though, because at this point, they're all bros, right? And I get you, at this point, there's probably some of them start cheering, right? Oh, my goodness, Peter, yeah, man, you the man, you got it, Peter, I want to see you do this. Hey, guys, do you think he's going to do it? And then over to the side, maybe Bartholomew's like, I got 20. that says he won't. And I don't know what they're doing, but I know it was probably boisterous, and there was probably a lot of cheering, and there was maybe some mocking. Is he going to even try this? What does he think he's doing? Why does he always do this kind of thing? Oh, to be in that boat, to feel the nerves, what anticipation, what excitement, what drama was about to unfold. Verse 29, right? Then Peter got down out of the boat. And I imagine he's not like, woo. I imagine it's more like grabbing the edge of the boat, right? And then it's like, he's holding all of the weight on the edge of the boat and the leg inside. And then maybe he's like, whoa, like what? It's like firm. And then it's the other leg. And then it's like, I heard that, Uncle. And then it's like, oh, 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 oh. Imagine the look he gave the other disciples in the boat. Throw that chest out there. Hey, look what I'm doing. You guys bored in the boat? I wonder if he turned back and talked some smack. I know I would be. Dude, check me out. I'm walking on water. To me, this is one of the most under-talked about miracles in the Bible. Because he did it. Like the exact same thing I dreamed about doing when I was 12 years old. He actually did it. I believed I could, and I just failed. He actually did it. This story in my Bible is titled Jesus Walks on Water. It just is. In every Bible I've ever seen, Jesus walks on water. I think it's the wrong title. I think they got it backwards. I know Jesus can walk on water. He's Jesus. I expect him to. He's going to do cool things. But that Peter could do it just because Jesus said, come do it, that whatever Jesus told Peter to do, it was possible. That's a story. Think about what would happen in your life and mine if we actually took Jesus at his word and every single thing he commanded us to do, we actually did it. What would happen in our lives? What miracles would we see? What differences would we make? And Peter walks on water. And you know the guys in the back of the boat now? They're back there. They're going nuts at this point. Dude, you're doing it. Oh, my goodness, you got it, bro. You rock. I'm a big Peter. And then what? Matthew 14:30 is what? When he saw the wind, he was afraid. That's weird. And began to sink and cried out, Lord, save me. So here we go from for Pete's sake, he's doing it, to now we've got a life and death situation on our hands, right? Which kind of surprises me, by the way. Not that he takes his eyes off of Jesus and can no longer walk. It surprises me that he can no longer swim. Doesn't it bother you? Like in John 21:7, Jesus has been resurrected. He shows up on shore. The disciples are out in a boat once again, and Peter sees him, and he's like, hey, it's me, Jesus. And Peter's like, wait, what? And he takes his outer robe off, and he jumps into the water and swims all the way to Jesus on the shore. Now would be a good time to swim to Jesus. Whatever the case, he starts to sink. In every sermon I've ever heard on this text, this is where the pastor makes the point, don't take your eyes off of Jesus. Right? You've heard that before, because if you do, then you sink. That's when the doubt creeps in, and then you drown. And I'm not saying that's not true. There's an element of truth in there, and we can definitely learn that lesson from this story. Because there are a lot of distractions, and there are a lot of things off to the left and to the right all around us. And if we fix our eyes on them instead of him, we're looking at the wrong thing. So yeah, that is a point that we can learn from the story. Fix your eyes on Jesus. But the story's not over. There's more to the story. Peter cries out, help me, Jesus, help me. I'm sinking, Jesus. I need you, Jesus. Right? He did what so many of us do when life gets a little bit crazy and the walls are caving in and we feel overwhelmed and are afraid. He cries out to the one person who can save him. And what does Jesus do? Well, verse 31. Immediately he reaches out his arm, his hand, and he caught him, and says, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" So Jesus saves his life. Now comes the criticism and the challenge. Now comes the truth. And by the way, I don't see this as a rebuke as much as I do a lesson to learn, a truth to discover about Jesus and about himself. It's time for Peter to learn from this, right? I think more often than not as a parent, by the way, that's what I'm after as a parent. I fail at it sometimes. Because we might say things like this to our kids, like, "How could you?" Or, "Hey, I told you that would happen," or "Why didn't you just trust what I said you needed to do?" Students sound familiar? But when I say that with my kids, it's not as if I'm angry, right? It's not as if, it's just a sense of knowing they missed out. It's the sense of knowing there's something they could have done. Had they not lost faith, had they not lost sight, had they not doubted, right? And as a parent, that's so hard when you see that in your kid. Listen, Dryden's first season of club volleyball, she was 13 years old. She was a setter. And Coach John and Meg were the coaches. Wonderful coaches, even better people. And so they took Dryden for this team, and she was going to be a setter. And so how it worked, they ran what was called a 6-2. What that means is this. When you're setting from the back row, so you're in for 3 rotations. Then when you go to the front row, they put a hitter in for the setter, and a new setter comes into the back row, right? And so there's 2 setters. But because of the roster construction, they needed one of their hitters, the setters rather, when they got to the front row to stay in and hit and then come back and set. So one of the setters would play 3 rotations and sit in the bench. The other setter would play 3 rotations setting and then 3 rotations hitting. You're on the whole time. What athlete does not want to be on the whole time? And since Dryden's a gifted hitter as well, Coach John gave her the first crack at it, right? They're at a tournament, and she got to play all around. And the very first match of the day, she was terrible. She couldn't hit the ball in the court. She was hitting into the net, hitting it out of bounds. And because she was struggling, Coach John said, "Okay, the next match, and we're going to put Declan in, the other setter, to be all the way around, right? And to hit in the front row." And Dryden was like devastated. She was embarrassed, like, I missed those hits, whatever. And Coach at one point came over and talked to her and said, are you okay? I just want to make sure. And she's like, and so what she said was the safe answer. "Yeah, having that rest when I'm out is probably a good thing." Instead of, "Yeah, I can't wait till I get another chance at it, Coach." And all season long, right, he left Declan in. I remember telling her, I just asked the coach, just say, "Hey, can I have another shot at it? Hey, can I get another chance to go in? Hey, can I get my other chance to play all around?" And just have enough faith, because he wants you to succeed in that position. And she was so scared. She was so scared at the thought, well, what if they're insulted that I would dare approach them? Or what if they say no? Or what if what he says I don't want to hear? She was so afraid to ask. She missed out on what she desperately wanted, something she could have had. She's learned from that. And now when she has a coach and she has a question, she goes immediately to him. But she had to learn that lesson the hard way. And I wasn't angry with Dryden when we had those talks, because we talked about it a lot that season. It's just that what she wanted so badly was right in front of her. But she had more doubts than she had faith, and so she didn't ask. Why couldn't you believe enough to just ask? I think that's the tone of Jesus here. Peter, everything you had was right in front of you. How could you not trust after what you've seen? How can you still have those kind of doubts? I've done so much for you, Peter, but only one thing can wreck it. Only one thing can sink you, Peter. That's doubting me. And then they all get in the boat, right? And the wind dies down. And the disciples do the same thing they did in the last boat when the storm was rebuked. They fell down basically in awe of Jesus and worshiped. Who is this guy? He now walks on water. That's the point of the story, right? Like, who is Jesus? No matter what it is, like, he is the center of everything. By the way, there is a detail in the John account that to me doesn't get enough run. All right? So when you read the book of John, about this moment in the boat, it fascinates me. It says in John, it says, they immediately got him in, no, it said they got him in the boat, and when they did, immediately they were at shore. That miracle does not get enough credit. Think about that. That's the kind of miracle I pray for at stoplights and in traffic on 66 when they're doing night construction. Just let me don't close your eyes when you're driving, but just let me be home. Could you imagine? That's an impressive miracle. But here we are, right? And all's well that ends well. They're in the boat. Everyone's safe. And there's a ton of takeaways. And many of them we touched on already as we combed through the text. But here's where I want to park the sermon car this morning. For me, it's what Jesus does when Peter fails. When the doubts creep in and the fear takes over and he loses focus and he starts to sink, Jesus saves him. He's not going to let him drown. Even if his faith is not where it should be, or the doubts take over, or he loses sight of what brought him success in the first place, Jesus is not going to let him drown. Fail, yes. Drown, no. And there's a profound application, I believe, for us in this, because Peter attempted something pretty epic, right? Something rather unthinkable and mind-blowing, something God-sized. And he put his faith into motion and got out of the boat because Jesus was with him. Because Jesus did this, he's like, heck yeah, you bet, I'll do it. I'll walk away from safe and I'll walk towards you. And darned if that guy didn't walk on water. But it didn't take long, right, for outside things to deter and distract and defeat him. And no sooner did he take a few steps, he faltered and freaked out and failed. Failed. And Jesus let him. Soak on that. I want you to think about this. And the first few times, for years, I read this story, I never really thought about this. He didn't stop him from failing in front of the other disciples that he was probably impressing early on, like we do for our kids, right? Stop them from failing. Like they come home from school, and they've got this paper, and it's due, but they got 3 other papers to do, and so at night you find yourself up doing way too much of your kids' paper to the point where you can't wait to see what kind of a grade you got, right? We kind of bail them out sometimes, like when Salsa's like 2, and let's run up the stairs. I'll race you, Papa. I'm like, Papa. And there's always something that grabs my ankle to trip me. Because we protect them from failing. Nope, not Jesus. Think about it. Jesus, by his own power, could have sustained Peter. Right? By his own power, when Peter stood out there, Jesus could have made the water a little bit firmer. He could have, that moment, made the seas die down completely so they were just a crystal clear thing of water. He could have made the wind go away instantly so that there's not all that stuff to the left and the right that could possibly distract him. He could have extend his hand here. I'll guide you while you do this. So Jesus could have stopped Peter from failing. He didn't. He let Peter fail. And he'll let you and I fail. But he didn't let him drown. Why that matters is this. What's stopping you then from getting out of the boat? Like if you know God has put his Spirit in you and Jesus is with you and you've been promised that he has gifted you. And we read in the book of John 14:12, the most incredible promise in the Bible. If we were to actually understand it when Jesus said, hey, the people who are going to come after me, the people who are going to follow me years from now, those people, they're going to do even greater things than I did. What? Like if he said that about you and I, why not get out of the boat? Because is there risk involved in stepping out on faith? Yes. Is there a chance you could fail? Okay, yeah. Miserably fail? Of course. You bet there is. Because you may take a leap of faith. And you're like, God, I'm going to attempt this for you, and I'm going to try this, and maybe it goes well early on, and you're leaning on him, but some challenges maybe come along, and some threats come along, and you start taking your eyes off of Jesus and thinking about those things, and doubt kicks in. Gee, I don't know if I'm the right person for this, Jesus. And then you might fail, like Peter. And then you may have a tough lesson to learn, like Peter. And you may look bad in front of other people, like Peter. But why not try? Because although he's going to let you fail, if you cry out to him, He's not going to let you drown. He will pick you up and dust you off, and you will discover new truths and dream bigger dreams and explore and fail and learn and explore and fail and learn. And just when you least expect it, like Peter. I mean, that's the cycle of his life. You think about it when he shows up on the scene. Jesus is like, hey, follow me. He's like, I'm in, right? And he's following Jesus, and then all of a sudden, one day, Jesus is like, hey, Peter, who do you say that I am? He's like, you are the Son of God. You're the Christ. And God's like, whoa, like on this rock. That's an awesome job, Peter. And like the next minute, he's like, oh, Peter, what you just did there, you're more like Satan than anybody else I know. And Peter's like, wait, what? Right? And then one day, Peter's like, Jesus, I would do anything for you. I would die for you. And Peter's like, thank you. That's really noble of you. And then it's actually time to put that into action. And he runs away like a coward and denies Jesus 3 times. Up and down, up and down. And then comes the day of Pentecost. And there are thousands of people. The same people that had killed Jesus are gathered. And Peter stands up and he looks at the crowd that were responsible for hanging Jesus. And he points his finger at them. This is not politically correct. And goes, you did this. You did this. You nailed him to a tree. God sent Jesus and you killed him. That crowd, they very well, the same ones responsible for Jesus, could have rushed him right then and there so that he suffered the same fate. The same fate. 3,000 people were baptized. 3,000 people surrendered to Jesus. You see, that's the genius of Peter. No matter how many times he failed, he was always willing to get out of the boat. And that's my question for you. Are there previous failures that are holding you back? Things that are getting in the way from you stepping out on faith? So here's what I want you to do this morning. Dare to dream. Dare to wonder. Dare to start praying today. Jesus, what is it that you want me to do? And I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe for you it's James 1:27. Maybe as a husband and wife, you're like, you know what? We're gonna take care of orphans and widows and widows. We're gonna bring in a foster child, or we're gonna adopt a kid. And man, it's scary and it's overwhelming, but because of Jesus, I can. Or maybe it's what Rebecca Ray shared last week, men, that they need people with life first, men to come in and counsel these young men who've now got this pregnant girlfriend, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And you're like, I don't know what I would ever say to somebody in that shoes, but they need those Christ-centered mentors, and you could be one. Maybe it's speaking up to a coworker about Jesus, or yet better, maybe it's approaching the people you work with and saying, hey, on Tuesday mornings before work, why don't we get together for just a half hour for coffee, and we'll do a Bible study and start inviting people and just see what happens. Maybe it's giving generously for the first time. Maybe it's going on a mission trip. I don't know what it is. But Jesus, if you do this, I'm done playing safe. I'm getting out of the boat. I may fail, yes. I would rather attempt and fail something for you than succeed at anything else in life. Because even if I fail, I cry out to you, and you are there with me always. So why not get out of the boat? Will you pray with me? Father in heaven, first of all, thank you for sustaining my voice, just barely. But thank you for protecting and persevering for, Father, when we feel like there's nothing we could do for you, or we can't make a difference, or we don't have what it takes, and those lies sink in, Father. Thank you for reminding us that because of you, that with you, that in you, that because of your presence, there's no limit to what we can do. Father, I thank you that someone in this room will walk out of here today because they encountered your word and they heard a story about your son and they were inspired by the truth of your word. And your kingdom will grow because of it. Do something mighty in us.